Welcome back to the Proper Thieves podcast. Thank y'all for joining us for another episode. We have a really special guest for y'all today, Mr. Nathaniel Mayberg. He is an American who's been living in Israel since 2015. He runs marketing for an AI startup in the litigation space and is involved in various uh, philanthropic efforts. He's got a really cool story. We talked on the phone yesterday for a little while, from getting in touch with his religion at the young age of 14, developing some Jewish communities over in Israel, delivering food to soldiers over there fighting in the war, working in money services. I'm super interested to hear your story. I know we talked yesterday a little bit, and it got me super amped and super excited for it. So I hope the listeners will enjoy it as well. With that being said, do you kind of just want to start from the beginning, kind of where everything began for you and your story and your journey a little bit?
Sure. So to line it up, I was born in 96. So I was quite young and in Washington, D.C. So I was quite young when 9/11 happened. And everyone in the community, either doctor, lawyer, obviously, or government or finance.
Mm.
So a lot of table discussion I grew up around was about the war in Iraq. And obviously that was a lot of front page news. And I remember from a young age, the military was something that was often discussed. And when I was, I think 5 or 6, my dad showed me it was channel 112, military channel. And I was watching all sorts of stuff, documentaries, history, reenactments. And then I found a 10-part documentary on Buds,
On
SEAL
Buds.
Class 234. 10 hours. I must have watched this thing dozens of times through my childhood. And I thought, other than how cool it is being paid to essentially work out, scuba dive, skydive, shoot, what I thought was the coolest thing is their attitude, the level of professionalism, the things they live by. The only easy day was yesterday. My favorite, second place is first loser. And being around and in teams where nothing short of excellence is acceptable and you're gone. And I
Yeah.
really, from a young age, I appreciated that. And growing up, school I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't excellent. And I excelled a lot outside the classroom in various athletics and leadership positions and youth groups. And my eyes were just always set on being a SEAL. And originally a US SEAL. I thought for sure I'm going to join the Navy, going to go through buds. And I had my bar mitzvah in Israel. That was 13.
Okay.
And instead of asking for gifts, I asked people to donate to an organization called Thank the Israeli Soldiers, run by a couple out of the old city. And they back then it was still developing, but they ran programming for soldiers, mostly making them feel appreciated because Israelis often don't have a comprehension of how much diaspora, meaning Jews that live outside of Israel, appreciate them. And so
Mm.
it gives them, often rejuvenates their sense of purpose when they have experiences, especially with soldiers, I mean, with foreigners, parties at
Yeah.
bases, barbecues, events around the country. And I was, during my bar mitzvah, I was talking with an American who was serving in Israel. There's various ways to do that. And I was telling him that I wanted to be a SEAL. And he said, "Oh, you should check out Shayat at Shloshesrei, which means Flotilla 13. They're the equivalent to SEALs. A little different, obviously, but that piqued my interest. And so that was at 13. And from there, I was like, all right, I'm America. I was very patriotic. I was in the Boy Scouts, became an Eagle Scout, really loved growing up actually around people that were very Zionistic. It confused me when I was younger. Like, how can you live in America, but like support this other country so much? And as I matured, I understood like we're allies, we're the front line for the Middle East. Uh,
Mm.
our enemies are very open about wanting to destroy America, and not being fans of democracy and all the values that we hold dear as Westerners.
Mm-hmm.
Because they chant, there's can not made up. You can see it online. They chant death to Israel, and then right after, death to America.
Yeah.
Um, the Islamic extremists. So that kind of logically made sense of, okay, I can pursue that, and it fulfills two purposes: my Jewish identity and Zionism, and my American identity. So when I was 18, I moved to Israel, went to a religious pre-military program. So there's lots of pre-army programs in Israel, both to get like on an ideological level, get Israelis like very in touch with like the importance of the state of Israel, and like get them more idealistic and in touch with nationalism. And there's secular ones and there are religious ones. And the religious ones dive deep into both how to practice the very meticulous rules of Judaism in a military service, which gets complicated if you really if
Mm.
you really care. It's complicated in normal life. And then in a military service, it's ridiculous. And then also a lot of physical training for the guys that want to be in the special forces because there's long selection processes. So I
Yeah.
went to that, was exceptionally prepared for the physical stuff. My Hebrew was less than decent. And at the end of that year, I officially immigrated, got my ID, and went to a program called Garin Sabar, which was part of the Israeli Scouts organization. Literally means seed of sabras. Sabras are the one of the cactus plants, fruits that is spiky on the outside and sweet on the inside, which are what Israelis are like. And uh, by their own admission. And so essentially, a bunch of immigrants come together and you live on a kibbutz, which is these essentially villages, originally communist style, where you shared all your resources. This was in the 30s, 40s. Um, and they all had a business that was in the area. You got to apply. So you move onto a kibbutz together. You do a language program, immersion program if you need. You get ready for your tryouts, and essentially a soft landing into Israel, and a pipeline into the army where they handle bureaucracy that's difficult to handle on your own, and
Okay.
emotional support system. And I was like beyond ready for the tryouts. Like in my head, I was already in a SEAL and I just hadn't met the recruiters yet. They don't know who I am. They just need to meet me, and it's going to be very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and unfortunately, 2 weeks before the tryouts, I ran into some mental health challenges, significant ones,
Mm.
and I had to get on medication, and that was the end of my military service. Uh,
Mm.
bureaucracy, as soon as the pill pops in your mouth, you're out. And
Really?
yeah,
Mm.
you can
Damn.
appeal. They told me it's going to be a massive waste of my time. So I didn't. I tried 3 years later after university. I tried again to get in because I thought like there's crazy stories of guys somehow getting in when they were told they couldn't. But under my circumstances, it really wasn't going to happen. So I got my degree in communications at a small school, and they, yeah, graduated in 2019. COVID hit, and that that was super tough. Lockdowns.
Really?
Mm.
How bad
Yeah.
was it over there during the time?
So I think it was like everywhere else, where total utter denial, confusion. Then because the infrastructure of the country is so like tight in terms of amount of service members, amount of preparation, they lock down the country. And the fact that it's a strange mix of socialism and like capitalism, Western. Uh, so like they locked down tight. Like
Yeah.
you really couldn't get like I was volunteering to deliver food to elderly people, so I got a pass to drive. which I obviously took advantage of beyond my volunteering efforts. But um, you would drive in every single intersection that connected any neighborhood. There were cops. They were stopping you.
Wow.
Uh, it was wild. It was wild. It
Oh
was,
my.
um, and with my mental health challenges, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2, which is
Mm.
it's like the lesser extreme version of bipolar. And um,
What kind of symptoms were you having, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, so when I was about to join the military, I was on the manic side, so wasn't sleeping, um, crazy overconfidence, which
Mm.
is definitely partly how I was like feeling the way I described, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
inflated.
Yeah.
Like for sure I would have gotten selected and then I would have washed out because they'd be like, this guy's actually insane. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and special connection to God. Like I really thought I knew I wasn't a prophet because I understood the the guidelines of the religion like dictated certain things and I was
Mm.
really into it. So like there were things that it didn't get as bad as it could have. Um, but I thought I had like a unique thing going and like I was gonna kind of get into the Mossad and I became friends with this Arab cab driver and I thought I was like building a network because I met some of his friends. He was milking me for money.
Mm.
Overspend, smoking cigarettes, drinking lots of soda, like anything to keep yourself going.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and intense mood swings.
Mm.
So, and then the depression side is just, which is like COVID really that I had like a spike at the beginning into kind of mania and then a drop for a long time into depression. So that to is it the best analogy is it's like we're all cups, right? And your energy you get to the point where, right, for lighting people up like Christmas trees, you have an overflowing cup that you can share with other people.
Yeah.
And I think really clinical depression is there's just a hole in the cup. And no matter what you do or circumstances you change or power through, it can't fill up.
Mm.
It
Mm.
just can't. And I know there's a lot of narratives online. I think people that listen to this podcast are familiar with that depression isn't real. Um, and it's just a signal to fix the problems and work harder. And I think it's a good perspective to have in your toolkit because I think there are a lot of people that whatever cards they got dealt led them to feeling that way. And they really just like, if your life is being on Discord, watching porn, eating junk food, yeah, you're going to feel depressed and you could probably just fix that. But if you have, if you have your ducks in line and objectively on paper, your life is solid, but you still feel that way, from my experience, pretending, and there were times where I hopped on the narrative, got off the meds, and it got messy for me quick.
Really?
Uh,
Really?
yeah, like within 2 weeks, going up or
Mm.
down.
Mm.
And so it's just like there's something up. It's genetic. The data is clearly showing our generation is from the social media and like um, the genetically modified weed that
Yeah.
like
Mm.
he smoked in high school. That like there's more mental health challenges, and so like I'm open about it because I want to encourage people that to be open to exploring that. Um,
To be self-aware enough to realize, oh, I'm too up or down right now. Something's off. I need to look into
yeah.
this.
Yeah, exactly. And not to just throw medication at problems, but
Hmm.
I think if you're putting in the right efforts and you're not seeing results in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like living healthy, but you're not, it's just not things are not moving, it's something to explore. In terms of seeing a therapist, describing it, going to a psychiatrist
Mm-hmm.
and trying to find but it's important to try to find one that's conservative. A lot will
Yeah.
throw lithium, especially with my symptoms, a lot will throw lithium because if they don't give you, it's like highly effective despite its side effects. And if they don't, especially in the States, they often get sued if you like go and hurt yourself or whatever. So they'll
Mm.
throw it
Mm.
at you. So if you get lithium right away, uh, I'm whatever, not medical advice, but I would suggest uh like seeing other like getting multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
And yeah, so that yeah, during COVID I got hit pretty hard with that. Um it definitely affected me more than coronavirus ever could have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Young and fit. Everyone like our age that got really fucked up were obese, for being
Yeah.
honest.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, ironically too, I think suicides was spiked significantly during COVID and probably had a worse effect on
yeah,
the death toll globally than the actual disease itself.
that and then what followed, which was like from the lack of social interaction, like just
People's
like
businesses falling apart,
people's businesses, marriages,
marriages.
especially men, like struggling to socially afterwards because like you're just so
Mm-hmm.
out of practice.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
that stuff definitely like until recently, I remember it took a while to reprogram that people want to be spoken to in public.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's especially like with approaching women. Like for so long, my brain was like, "No, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to." And like,
Mm-hmm.
no,
Yeah.
uh, you're supposed to. Um, so yeah, but about I don't know, 8 months into COVID, I started looking for a job. Once because at first there was like things were not going well, there was no jobs, and then I don't know what it was like in the States, but in Israel, it like spiked. Like the VC money started flooding in. I think once people saw certain businesses could function, the VC money started pumping back into the country, and the amount of sales jobs that you could get. I only my first interview was for a PR company,
Mm-hmm.
and because the description was similar in sales, there was like a lot of outreach, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. But the pay was so bad that I cut it after the first interview.
Really?
Oh my God, it was like slave labor. I couldn't even
Oh my
believe.
gosh.
Yeah. And I got in touch with someone in HR. Well, no, first I found a book. I had raised money for the Jewish communities, which I can touch on later. Um, and so I'd done kind of some sales and I knew there were lots of jobs, and I came across this book called Relentlessly Prospecting. I believe that's what it's called, by Jeb Blount. It's definitely by Jeb Blount.
Okay.
And the I looked at the chapters, and the last one was on mindset. So obviously, like with my background, I jumped to that, and he went on. It was it was about how in reality, without salespeople succeeding, a company is worthless.
Yeah.
Salespeople's efforts pay everyone's salaries. It makes the valuation, and you are the elite athletes on the field, and everyone else is support staff.
Mm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's the closest to what I was seeking, I think I'll find in high tech.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I started applying for SDR jobs, eventually got in touch through my dad introduced me to someone he knew working in high tech. Got on a call. He said, here, just talk to my HR person. And she had they're like group chats where people were posting resumes. Someone I knew through my sister, I met at a party, saw my last name, recognized it, gave me a call. And a couple interviews later, had my first sales job as an SDR.
Was that
And
online or was that over there in Israel?
that was over there. It was a Series A. Uh, to be honest, the entire experience sucked. It was
Yeah.
horrible. It was horrible. I was seeking like interacting with people. Almost everyone was remote. The office was
Mm.
dead.
Mm.
Um, and my boss was stuck in America during my whole onboarding. So I didn't get onboarded properly. They
Mm.
did, however, pay for some training.
Yeah.
And I never, for some whatever reason, I couldn't the product was rapidly developing. Between that and the value proposition kept changing, and between that and the lack of onboarding, I never could get a grasp of what the value proposition was, how to explain it, because no one had enough free time and stuff that happens in Series A startups. Uh,
Mm.
but I learned how to be an SDR. I went through the motions properly, which is
Okay.
important, which served me later. And eventually, I bumped into this girl from college who had founded an insurance company that they had collected data on cloud services like AWS, Google Cloud, and worked with actuaries to measure the risk of each region, price insurance on
Mm.
cloud downtime. So think about online businesses, they go down, streaming service goes down, your customers can't access the service. Like an Uber, right? Online casino, they're losing money by the second.
Hmm.
Uh, and I told her I was an SDR. She asked me if I was looking for a job. I said no. She invited me to see the office that was close by to get coffee. I said sure. And she invited me into a room. We were talking. The CEO walked in, and suddenly I was in an interview. And which I thought was hilarious. And um and the CEO's asking me about myself, and I think they told him that there was an interview scheduled.
Really?
That's the impression I got. And
Yeah.
he goes, well, look, and I had looked at their website, so I knew what the business was about because like I don't go to meetings unprepared.
Hmm.
And even just a coffee, like I'm not going unprepared. And he goes, so you're already an SDR, so we don't really need to do a call simulation. But if you were to call someone, how would you do it? And I was like, all right. So I just like did my thing. I was like, just saying, hey, this is Nathaniel. Uh, and jumped into the script. I think I said something along the lines of like normally when I talk with XYZ, they experience this. Is that something that you can relate to? And he threw an objection at me. I handled it, another, and then he was just like, all right, cool. And like I think I got an offer, like I had one more interview and I got an offer a couple days later. It was really swift and they really poached. So I went there because I was really unhappy at the other company.
Yeah.
Uh, on the first day of work, I realized I was exceptionally smarter and more knowledgeable than my manager, who
Mm.
really bluffed me during the interview by his level of intensity.
Hmm.
Uh, and I realized I was in for a really wild ride. And I played some Machiavellian office politics because my manager had a lot of trust in the organization. He was hardcore Israeli, knew how to sell to Israel, did not know a thing about attacking the US market. And I
Mm.
realized I need to build trust with these executives fast so that they'll listen to me and not him.
Yeah.
So he would leave the office at like 6:30. I would stay till 11 and they'd see me cold calling, they'd see me grinding. And then I'd leave and they'd ask me how it's going and I'd explain to them what's going on, my observations. So I think by the end of like the second, third month, um, I was like basically in private Slack messages with the CEO daily. Uh, and things like I would basically make suggestions, and then after the one on my manager and the manager and the CEO would meet, like the VP of sales, my manager and the CEO would meet the next day. He would always come in going, okay, we have a new plan. And he would say what I had told the CEO like 3 days earlier. And I just
Uh,
go, because the number one rule in the laws of power book, right? Don't outshine your master,
Yep.
48 laws of power. So like I never would, I
Tell
just said,
him. Yeah.
I just said
Yeah.
great. I never even went to him with the suggestions because I
Hmm.
understood his ego. And I said, I have to circumvent him, this and that. Uh, so eventually enough of that and things starting to work a little bit better. They eventually canned him,
Mm.
which was cool. But unfortunately, the CEO decided to run sales and he had never sold instead of just letting us manage ourselves and just report to him.
Yeah.
And he's an engineer. So he wanted records of everything. And the bureaucracy that I had to deal with to do my job became so overwhelming that I was literally like paralyzed and falling apart. It was like I'd get to work and I like couldn't move because you had to do like 14 things at the same time. And I
Mm.
got a call one day from a buddy who had a money transfer service between America and Israel for expats. And it
Okay.
simplified a lot of bureaucracy and challenges and was better prices than that. Wasn't better service than Wise, for example, which is popular,
Yeah.
but they didn't there was enough market and they weren't doing enough advertising that we could build a business and be making some nice cash flow. We weren't gonna be
Hmm.
multimillionaires from it. But as like a 23-year-old, it was a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
So pursued that. My business partner had another business and essentially ended up in a bad partnership that I grinded out for about 10 months, and I grew the business by 50%. And then
Mm.
there were things that I actually broke the system once because I converted so many old leads into customers that
Really?
small problems became really big problems, and I stopped selling. I actually told him I
Really?
can't. Yeah, because I couldn't tell the truth on the phone because the
Mm.
error rate was so high. It was like
Mm.
when your error rates in your financial service is 2%, that's really bad.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
um,
What is error rate? Can you just like explain that for
an
me real quick?
error rate.
Error
Yeah,
rate.
error. If
Okay.
there's an
Okay.
issue with transfers, I can't say confidently on the phone anymore. I'm an ethical
Hmm.
salesperson. I can't say confidently this will happen.
I gotcha.
You can
Okay.
say it if the error rate is the rate of making mistakes is, less than 1%, less than 0.5%.
Yeah,
You can do it then, but like I wasn't comfortable.
I
Um,
got you.
and my 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 dad my dad's quite successful in the finance space, and we have a holding company that he makes in private investments into
Hmm.
startups that he's personally just passionate about and finds exceptionally interesting. And
Okay.
there was never a concept that I would work for him. Definitely not his main financial business. And um, there was something in the back of my head that said, okay, maybe when he would hire me, if I wasn't his son, then maybe I'll work with him or for one of these companies. But like, I'm never really going to ask. I want to do my own thing. I seem to be interested in things that aren't don't like different stuff. So like, it's cool to get advice, and I definitely have some business sense from him, but like uh
Hmm.
it's not something I'm gonna it was never like in my head just something I was gonna pursue. So when I
Yeah.
was prepared to leave the partnership, um I basically redid the market research,
Hmm.
made a plan for how to succeed, realized what I needed from my partner he wasn't gonna provide, and with the clock that I was on to vest my equity,
Yeah.
success was impossible. And when I got back in touch with what I was fighting for, it wasn't big enough opportunity it was supposed to be a fun thing with a friend to start a business, make some cash, automate it
Yeah.
as much as possible, move on to something else and just have cash flow and, like be able to buy some Bitcoin every month and pay for expenses and um, pursue something
Yeah.
higher risk. And I was like, this isn't worth it anymore.
Hmm.
And so my dad was actually our advisor, like on contract. And so I presented it to him and said, like, this is why I'm back. I'm gonna leave the partnership. And he was like, fantastic. I want to introduce you to one of the CEO of one of the companies I invested in. He had known for like 2, 3 months that this thing was not happening, but he was waiting for me to realize
Yeah.
it. We would talk on the phone because we had weekly calls that my partner wouldn't show up to, but I showed up because my dad made an hour to
Yeah.
talk about the business. So I would show up to those weekly calls.
Yeah.
And so he knew what was going on. So I presented it. Um, he At the end of every call, when we were basically talking about how this is like really not working and just frustrating, and he'd like get heated, and then he would go, but if you think there's an opportunity, you should just keep grinding it out. So he'd
Yeah.
fuck with my head.
Yeah.
And um which I don't think he normally does with people he mentors, but I'm his son, so I think he like needed to fuck with me
Yeah.
more. And so that's when he introduced me to this AI startup. And what's cool about this startup is we don't do generative AI. We
Okay.
don't. So basically most of a significant amount of AI right now is generative, and that's the hot topic. And in the legal
Hmm.
space, it's almost all generative, and the differentiation from startup to startup isn't. It's a lot of the same stuff with a couple, whatever. I'm not so in touch with. They're not competitors, so I don't really even know.
Yeah.
Um, but this product uses big data to decode behavior, so like behavioral analytics, to predict motions and timelines in litigation, uh, to predict using behavioral analytics to predict what a judge will do. It doesn't look at
Oh.
case history. It doesn't look at data that all the other analytics tools show you. Because if any judge, even a super experienced one, 50 years, maybe has 200 cases under their belt,
Mm-hmm.
anyone who takes statistics knows you can't build a predictive model on that many data points. It's not enough.
Yeah.
And also the software is extremely complex. When you need to do research on, well, a motion to dismiss, meaning the judge will just toss the case or this part of the case because it's irrelevant, the law doesn't support it, and that's to their discretion. It's going to take a team. It's going to take a team of associates at $600 an hour. It's going to cost 10 grand to do that research and come to a conclusion to make a recommendation and formulate strategy.
Mm.
We can do it with about 85% accuracy for a third of the price.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's the product. You can there's also pre-filing. So let's say you're trying to figure out what jurisdiction, what region, where should we file this? We can predict like where the most advantageous place to go, if it's pre-filing or if it's for transfer.
And you guys track data in the States too, or is this only
It's
Israel?
only in the States.
Oh, okay.
Right now it's federal. We're about to open in California for state. And that's what we do. So I find it fascinating.
How interesting thinking about AI affecting like judicial decisions and things like that.
So it's basically like giving you like what the probability is that they will like toss the case or like what their decision would be on the case. Am I getting that right?
On certain motions.
Okay.
So there's like the litigation space, there's a lot of moves you can take and there's a lot of complexity, right? You don't just show up and say what happened and then they rule. Like there's a lot of different ways to approach. And things get passed to be able to navigate the route that way, to be able to throw a case out or say, I don't fully understand. I'm still kind of new. I don't fully understand all the parts.
Got you.
But I also market. I don't really sell it. So
okay,
yeah. But let's say, for example, the law is really tight. Like we could win this in trial. But we provide timelines as well. So it could be okay, but going through trial is going to take, like getting through trial is going to take 2.5 years. It's going to take this from this range of man hours. And so your net profit on winning this is going to be lower than what we could likely settle at right now. So let's settle, even though we're really confident we could win in court.
Okay.
That's like one power of it. So it enables them to make really tight strategy based on statistically sound predictions.
Yeah.
Instead of speculation, anecdotal people, oh, I worked with that judge before. And it takes away the fog of litigation because how long is this going to take? No way to know. Is this going to pass? We think so, but no way to know. Now it's, okay, well, you're a Fortune 500 company, you're suing individuals, class action. We found that liberal female judges that went to Harvard, that went to an Ivy League school and grew up in a low income household actually favor corporations. So we're going to do X. If you notice, I just said something that if you saw a black female judge who's Democrat and grew up low income, you'd be like, oh, they're super, like they're going to favor that, like they're going to favor with individuals because but the reality is the opposite, right? You can speculate because they relate to the grind, they did it, so they associate with somewhere else, but there's a lot of counterintuitive conclusions.
When you start looking at the data, interesting.
When you start, we decode who they are, and that way we decode basically every judge. So we can compare, we can expand the model from just one judge to these 25 judges, and then which expands the data set and allows the predictive model to come out.
Mm.
Yeah.
So we can
So,
be basing decisions off of a group of judges that are all similar, that did a similar case, and
okay.
give you data for that case with that judge.
So who are the primary people you're trying to like sell this service to? Like, is it only available? I know you said you're about to get it in California. Is this something that's like available nationwide? Is it like an
All 50
online
states
service?
for all 50 states for federal litigation, or
Okay.
it'll be eventually also for state, but there's obviously processes of getting
Hmm.
technology approved. And our main target is large litigation firms, high volume of cases,
Okay.
commercial litigation, high volume of cases. We just closed Quinn Emanuel, which is like a monster in the litigation space.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh, so like they're known, when if you're up against Quinn Emanuel, like it's a fight. People, litigators know that. So we got
Mm.
a whale as our first customer. The press release is coming out soon, and we're gonna really
That's exciting.
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this now? Like since you started doing
In
it?
my fourth month,
In your fourth month?
yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm working with really smart people, and um and they're all really dedicated. And that's my favorite. Like I'm finally with an A team.
Yeah.
So it took
Yeah.
it took 4 years of different projects, but uh my father says, I don't know if this is an original quote, but he always said and reminded me that success is when preparation meets opportunity. And something I struggled with early in my career was I thought I was quitting. In my head, I'm a Navy SEAL. I don't quit.
Mm.
And it was a big maturing process to distinguish quitting from understanding, having self-awareness of what's going on in the environment and making a strategic decision. Leaving
Yeah.
sales and going to customer success, quitting. That's
Yeah.
quitting.
Mm.
But identifying a better opportunity, doing an analysis of why it is that you're leaving, not necessarily doing it because it's hard, but because it's logical,
Yeah.
is progressing. Because I actually never hit quota at my first two jobs, not a
Mm.
single time. And you're seeing on LinkedIn, oh, I've always hit quota, blah, blah, blah. First of all, if you're at a Series A startup, one meeting is worth hitting, like 1 to 2, 3 meetings is worth hitting quota at a Salesforce where you could go in and listen to the last 5,000 calls that went successfully,
Mhm.
Hmm.
proven sales methodologies. So if you're early in your career, it's just important, and we're especially working at small startups, just important to get the fundamentals down. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I saw it work when I went B2C, and I grew that company really fast.
Well,
Um,
well, Nathan, I want to hear a little bit about your philanthropic stuff you're involved in right now. Can you tell us about that?
yeah. So, there's kind of two sides. The one, that really basically everything led up to what happened during the war, which is like incredible in hindsight 2020 what happened. But I was in
Hmm.
school in Herzliya. I was I was religious back then, like much more practicing, and there was no community. And Orthodox Jews from the United States, really from the diaspora, are used to tight-knit communities with a rabbi who leads it, programming, synagogue on Shabbat, holidays, and it's what makes home feel like home. And there was none of that in Israel, which
Mm.
foreigners wouldn't expect because it's Israel, it's a Jewish homeland. You should have everything should be set up. Uh, so my second, no, towards the end of my first year of school, there's an organization called the Orthodox Union. They handle a lot of Orthodox infrastructure of various sorts in the United States, from eating restriction. Like if you look at packaging, start
Hmm.
looking at packaging, you might see a little OU on
Okay.
things, or like a triangle K and it says kosher. So
Hmm.
that's approved. Jews that follow eating restrictions can eat that. And there's supervision at the factories, and it's a whole process. They have to pay for it. If you've ever noticed around this time of year, look in the supermarkets, you'll see Coca-Cola with yellow caps. If you see a
Okay.
Coca-Cola with yellow caps, look in the ingredients, it will be cane sugar. Why?
Huh.
Because Ashkenazi Jews can't drink corn syrup on Passover, which just passed.
Oh,
Huh.
that's interesting.
Yeah. Starting to
That's
get a
it.
sense
Yeah.
of where anti-Semitic conspiracies come from.
Yeah.
It's all bullshit. It's just like we're
Yellow
organized,
cats.
we work together, and we survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Coca, and we buy enough stuff that, Coca-Cola's like, okay, well, we'll do some cane sugar for you guys for 8 days. Um, so they do things like that. From there to organize it, they had a program called JLIC, Jewish Learning Initiative on campus. So
Mm-hmm.
they basically send Rabbi and his wife and family, and they build a community on college campuses in the United States. There was an OU representative in Israel. He basically identified that there was a need at our university and walked around campus asking students with the kippot, with the hats, the little hats, how they felt. And I just got approached on campus. And I'm like, oh, sounds awesome. And he goes, okay, there's a meeting on next Tuesday. There's going to be pizza. Come by. We're going to have a group discussion. I went, 35 students there. Great discussion. At the end of it, he goes, okay, so this is great. The next step is we do need to fundraise.
Mm-hmm.
And we scheduled a meeting. He said, we scheduled a meeting for the next week. It went from 35 to 3.
Oh,
Mhm.
wow.
Me and 2 other guys showed up.
Damn.
Third meeting, 2.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's how I accidentally ended up co-founding the first JLIC in Israel on this campus.
Yeah.
And everyone was doubting us. The OU was so skeptical. It was super hard work to convince them to support us at all.
Mm-hmm.
Found a foundation. They put in 100K for the first year. We had a whole plan. It almost fell apart. Like we didn't know if it was really happening until like 2 weeks before school started. It was
Mm-hmm.
stressful. And it was orientation week, and there was like basically all the clubs got to set up on the first day, and we were supposed to have a booth. Whatever stupid bureaucracy, they called us at midnight night before and said the rabbi can't come onto campus for XYZ reasons. And we're like, what do we do? So I said, you know what? Let's say we're an organization that organizes Friday night dinners for first years with second and third years so that they can meet students that are older.
Mm-hmm.
And we can collect phone numbers and emails to kickstart our marketing efforts. And we're going to get a wide thing. And then from that, we'll be able to like funnel into what we're actually doing. And the students that are not interested will funnel out, but we'll end up with some people that are Orthodox and are into this.
Yeah.
And I think we ended up organizing dinner for like 150 students, had a crazy after party at the house I was living in, which was fun. No music because it was like Orthodox, but like
Mm.
100
Uh,
people, like we all got wasted. It was hilarious.
Why no music?
Because it was the Sabbath.
Oh,
Mm.
no music on the Sabbath.
No electronics.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's no
Interesting.
music, but it was a lit party. I remember the rabbi and his wife came in. They looked at me, and the first thing she goes is, "Are you drunk?" I just looked at her like, "Yeah, I am." Long story short, the community exploded. We serviced I think like 800 students total the first year, like that came in through
That's
the
beautiful.
people started that were like gonna go back to America after their army service or after their gap year for school because there was no community, started like immigrating, officially coming. People like word came from America. A lot of people decided like they're not going to go to school in America. They're gonna go here, want to live in Israel. Now I can be religious on campus.
Mm.
Uh, so we made a big impact on the country because they ended up opening 4 more on other campuses because the
Yeah.
model was so successful. And now there's actually 2 couples on the original campus because they're servicing like regular goers are like in the hundreds now.
Wow.
And we got a lot of support from the university because we were bringing students. So we
Yeah.
became like a revenue source essentially. So like they supported us logistically a lot, never gave us a dollar for anything, but it's okay. And that was like my first like legacy. Like I really literally built a legacy. One of my favorite things to do is go to an event. No one knows, like at this point, no one knows who I am. And
Mm-hmm.
just like seeing what this deal is. And I'll meet people and they'll tell me like, oh yeah, like I visited the JLIC, or yeah, like it was amazing during college. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Like I'll meet people that are like we're the president or are the president. I'm like, oh, that's cool. They have no idea who I am, and uh,
Yeah.
I just like that for some reason. I never tell them.
Yeah.
And after COVID, that original rabbi approached me and basically said, there are tens of millions of dollars, if not in the hundreds of millions of dollars invested in Jewish enrichment education, summer programs from high school to college, and then through college, and then in young Jewish communities, basically once people get married and beyond. He goes, there's a
Mm.
gap in the young professional, in cities and young professional community, like for young professionals.
Yeah.
And I want to try building a similar model, but for cities. Do you want to start it with us? So I was like,
Yeah.
in Tel Aviv, right? So I said, sure, but city life is different than, I told him city life is different than campus life. And I would rather postpone the project for 5 years than hire the wrong couple.
Yeah.
We can't hire the wrong, we have to find the right couple. Uh, and he said, I think I know the right couple. They're they've been doing this at NYU for about 5 years. And so like they really understand the city. They've lived in Israel. They're super charismatic. They're British. Um, but first, like let's go run some focus groups and see how people are feeling. We got like leaders from the JLIC in Herzliya that had moved to Tel Aviv, original like OGs, and they're
Hmm.
all like, "Oh no, we don't need it. It wouldn't work here."
Mm.
And we were shocked, but that's what people told us. That's what a lot of people said for the first one. And me and
Yeah.
him, you know what? We see it. Uh, it's okay. Like maybe those people will show up. I said that we both knew there was a market. We had to prove to the OU that there were at least 300 Americans in Tel Aviv, which was comical.
Mm.
That were like Orthodox or whatever. So I gathered some people. We went on Facebook. Everyone went
Hmm.
through there. We were trying to like, should we send surveys around this, that? I eventually said, no, no, no. Facebook, look through our friends, make a spreadsheet in 45 minutes. We had a list of 300 people, sent it over, same fundraising process, got it
Yeah.
done, brought the family over, and it's almost 3 years ago now. Started this
Wow.
community and blew up. Um, and that, yeah, I mean, and that was it exploded. Several hundred people in the WhatsApp group, a lot of like massive attendance at events.
Mm.
Um,
So you're basically helping Orthodox American Jews in Israel. Is that
yeah,
the
well, it's officially for Americans, but a lot of English, South Americans, like English speakers show up. So like there's weekly classes learning, studying parts of the Old Testament and like surrounding texts, and there's social events and there's stuff on the Sabbath and holidays, um and
Are
like
you still
they just get coffees with people, build relationships.
are you still active in these groups and do stuff for them like currently, or is it something you just built and now you're on to new endeavors?
Yeah, I tend to, I seem to be an early stage guy.
Mm.
So I like getting things off the ground. And
Yeah.
so I still go to some stuff, and I'll help out with like, okay, we need to do like, I'll move pieces very much behind the scenes sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, I'm kind of a connector. It just kind of like the way that which in an interesting sense, sometimes it feels like I'm not really doing things, but like I get a lot of credit because like I
Yeah.
connected pieces and then those people did things. So,
Yeah.
uh, but that's just like a high achievement, you know, what's it called? Uh, when people
I
have
gosh, I know what you're talking about. I can't think
a
of the word
word,
either. Uh
not conflict, when you have a,
it's just when you don't think you're doing a lot, but you're actually
yeah,
doing a
just,
lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
knows what I'm talking about. So,
Yeah.
um,
so how has all the war going on in Israel affected the community?
yeah, so that was mind blowing. Um,
Hmm.
when so the war,
Were
October 7th, was on what's called Simchat Torah. It's the celebration
And what's that?
when Moses came to, it's the celebration of the Bible. It's when Moses
Okay.
came down, the Jews were in the desert when they left from Egypt from being enslaved for a few hundred years. And this is all in the Old Testament, you can read it. And we received the Bible, and it's a big celebration. Um, and people dance, get drunk like late into the night. It's hilarious. Like if you saw videos like Jews like dancing with the scroll, and they're just going like they're just partying, and
Bible rig.
it's a fun holiday. I was in America and I flew back for it because it's that fun.
Mm.
Hmm.
All right. And like I don't keep the Sabbath. And like I was like, no, I'm going to like an Orthodox thing because like it's lit.
Mhm.
I'm like separate dancing, it's still lit. Like it's super fun. Um, and so I went, woke up on the 7th and had a missed call from my sister who's Orthodox, like who doesn't make calls on holidays. So I called back, and her boyfriend, now fiance actually, who's a little bit dramatic, goes, uh, a war just broke out. Hamas has been shooting rockets. They broke the borders. They're stealing tanks. You need to lock all the doors, close the windows. He's like, they're invading the country. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And I hung up the phone. Like the rockets, yeah, sure, I believe. Like I've had to run to bomb shelters before. It's like not really a big deal because of the Iron Dome. Um,
Mm.
which by the way has saved, like we can get into that later perhaps, but the Iron Dome has saved more Palestinian lives than anything else.
What is
Uh,
the Iron Dome?
the Iron Dome is the the missile defense system. So it was started being developed by Americans. They gave it to Israel, developed it into something real. They have it on tanks now. Now they have it for ICBMs. Essentially, it identifies the projectile, shoots a rocket, blows it out of the sky. So you have a
Mm.
dome around your city.
Mm.
That's where a lot of the conflict of like disproportionate responses come, because we'll get a barrage of rockets and like nothing really happens. Costs a lot of
Yeah.
money. US taxpayers really pay for it, but like nothing really happens.
Yeah.
People do die. I'm not gonna say nothing, but there are graves of people that were killed by rockets, um but normally it's like it's really not a big deal.
Yeah.
So I went to my laptop and saw a message from my friend Shupangi, who's an Indian girl I'm friends with, and she goes, "Are you safe?" And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" She goes, "You have to check the news. The pictures are horrifying." So I opened up the news, and it was like a few dead were reported. There were some people some terrorists in the country. Rockets had gone off, but like it's Israel. Like Israel is known for a strong military. Like it'll be okay.
Hmm.
And then I start digging some more, and literally by every 15 minutes, it was just more and more. It was getting worse and worse and worse. And then the first article popped up that a woman, a girl had been kidnapped. And when I saw
Mm.
that they had kidnapped a girl like into Gaza, I was like, oh shit, they just crossed the line. We're going to war,
Yeah.
because you don't kidnap civilians. It's not like it's not a thing that you do.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a horrible day because things just kept coming out. Then the Nova Festival hit the news, which is like a music festival. Um, this
And
is
what
actually
happened there?
so the Nova Festival actually probably of the decade, if not the last few decades, is gonna, in my opinion, one of the biggest um, shifts in Israeli political ideology, political stances that could have ever happened.
Why?
It was the holiday was on the attack was on a holiday. All the right most majority of Orthodox religious practicing Israelis are religious. So none of them were at a music festival on a holiday. Everyone at this
Mm.
music festival was left wing. And there were a lot of Israelis that were not okay with this, how we deal with security in Israel. Some to delusional levels, and there's a lot of vicious division in the country. Like
Mm.
Americans and Europeans think that they're critical. Israelis are the most critical people of Israel. It's just in Hebrew,
Mm.
so you don't you don't look at it, you don't understand it.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you go to haaretz.com, left-wing newspaper from before the war, you look at like old stuff, like you'll see still some stuff now, but you'll see like really sometimes borderline anti-Israel
Mm.
reporting. Um, but suddenly everyone in the country, because it's a small country, everyone in the country who was left-wing knew or had friends that got killed or are now extremely traumatized. And then in addition to that, the border communities that got the brunt of the attack on the 7th, many of them were populated by also far left leaning, like lack of a better word, like real like Palestinian sympathizers that like really wanted like got Palestinians jobs on farms, employed them in their neighborhoods, helped them get medical treatment that's not available in Gaza. Like people are really, really trying to extend olive branches, trying to push the narrative towards what we were hoping Gaza would become when we pulled out in the early 2000s, which was a functioning territory with its own economy. They were calling it, they were hoping, we were all hoping that it was going to become the Singapore of the Middle East.
Hmm.
If it went well, we would have built an international airport in the water. Like there was a lot of potential. And, you elect a terrorist organization, uh, and we got what we got. But there are people that really believed, and they faced the brunt of the kidnappings and the murders on the 7th. So
Yeah.
suddenly, except for like extreme delusional far left leaning individuals, everyone was aligned on security.
Yeah.
And naturally everyone was calling for war. And um, the consequences of that we won't know for a long time, but maybe not. But like everyone and it unified. Unfortunately, it's often through these horrible things. But the country got unified in a way that wasn't previously realistic.
Yeah.
Uh, so to tie it back to the community, immediately that like the entire country, it's really wild to see how individuals can mobilize and self-organize.
Hmm.
Uh,
Sure.
Totally chaotic, just like war, and it was frightening because there were terrorists inside the country, unknown amount. They had blown up comm centers, so like the wars originally was getting run on WhatsApp. Um, they were
Hmm.
literally like
What do you
pilots
mean by that?
communicating. What?
How is it run on WhatsApp?
All the radios went down. So group chats of units that like stay in touch because they're like brothers in arms.
Hmm.
Uh, and like all the commanders know each other and like everyone has each other's phone numbers that need to be in contact on the radio. They have phone numbers. So the comms were down. People also were hungover, a lot of the military goes home on holidays because they get off, right?
Hmm.
Israel was very confident in our security and our smart fences and overconfident, big.
Yeah.
Um, so everyone was mobilizing through WhatsApp. Like I spoke to pilots, like observation pilots that were doing reconnaissance that were talking to ground forces on fucking WhatsApp. Like they just had
Wow.
to fly
God.
low altitude and they were talking on WhatsApp. Um,
Wow.
like crazy stuff. Like
That's
like you
interesting.
never imagine like the U.S. military like operating that way. It's like nuts. Uh,
Yeah.
and WhatsApp was invented in Israel, so it's kind of like the term WhatsApp nation kind of got invented on October 7th because like I looked at my phone, I was added to like 30 WhatsApp groups of people just like we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do that. And I was stuck in my sister's neighborhood up north. So I
What
got
kind
on.
of what kind of stuff were they needing to get done in these groups?
Um, so I mean it obviously developed, but a lot of it immediately was uh food for
Mm,
soldiers and
Hmm.
displaced people. Then housing, a lot of military equipment. Hey, we don't have bulletproof vests. Hey, we don't have like we weren't prepared for like the entire reserves to get called up.
Hmm.
Like there's
yeah.
like supplies for reserves and like there's a thing, but like the country was not prepared.
Yeah.
Which broke an illusion that we thought we were kind of prepared for everything.
And this is a
Uh,
lot of civilians getting involved, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, there are like civilians that are reservists and get called into the military, and then there were like civilians that stayed civilians. But
I see.
my friends all went to the army, and so they're texting me like, "Hey, we don't have tape that we need for our guns. Hey, we don't have this, we don't have that," and you're also like we don't really have enough food. So you're getting all this information. The army's telling civilians not to buy anything. It's like this big mess.
And so you were actually helping deliver food and stuff in the middle of this skirmish, basically.
Yeah, like the center of town, like the center square was like just a center to drop off food. And they were like, on cardboard boxes, like holding up what it is that they need. We were like renting cars, like car to go, which you could like rent for 2 hours to like run to a supermarket outside the city because the prices were better and they had things in bulk and like and that was like the first 2 days. Then a lot of the military equipment requests started coming in. So we're like running to camping stores to get stuff. We're going to electronic stores. We were getting a buddy who was a drone pilot, and they didn't have enough headphones, and they were plugging in desk
Earbuds.
like phones,
Oh,
and they were taping it to their faces to communicate with the pilots or the ground forces. So
oh
we
my
went and
gosh.
found we bought call center, like call center phones and gave it and like delivered it to Air Force bases and like raising money for bulletproof vests. They requests for like DJI drones started coming in. So like, to patrol and it's a DJI save a lot of lives. And so we're getting that, and like the supplies are all running out in Israel, and you're trying to find suppliers outside of Israel, and the prices are starting to get driven up. There were scammers who have a special place in hell. There were Israelis scamming people. A couple of us raised like a couple $100K to buy bulletproof vests. I found a supplier, was communicating with him. And then I was getting very detailed requests. And when I started and he's like, yeah, I got it. And then he like sent me something and it wasn't like detailed enough. And I like asked him like, hey, like I need XYZ specifications. And then, the responses started getting like less quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, fuck this guy. And I just kind of like moved on. And then it came out like they called him, they were like, there's a Tinder swindler of the military equipment. And it was this guy and his brother. And then there was a chick that was doing it. Like obviously
Oh
like
my
some
gosh.
girl psychopath was doing it.
Mm.
But that, so you're like navigating, so then you're on the lookout for scammers and like all this is happening. And then a siren goes off and you're running to a bomb shelter. You're like driving your car, siren goes off, you're laying on the pavement. Your reports of people dead coming out, you're scrolling, is it my friend? Do I know anyone? And so it's like it was just this adrenaline filled environment. I ended up on a letter from a captain in the Ministry of Defense was going around saying these are the approved drones that the military is requesting. And there was an address that was not far from me in a main building. So I went to the building because I'm like, all right, I'll just go verify this because this looks like a scam. And it basically was an ad hoc, what they were calling a civilian attaché of the Ministry of Defense that were raising money for drones and all sorts of other stuff. There were, and so I got there and they're like, it was like the most organized operation I came across. It was still super unorganized. I ended up staying there for 3 days. Part of a team, we raised a lot of money, got a lot of drones into the country. It was totally hectic. We're up to like 4 a.m. talking to people all the way to California. Because I was kind of like I was doing sales, but like for the cause, and met a lot of like fascinating characters. Heard one rumor that was cool that that they had started hacking crypto wallets that belonged to Hamas, and we were like, the idea was like stealing their money. I don't know if it's true, but like you're like talking like starting to hear these like weird things from because like just people were coming
From
in
all
the
these
door
people.
were in different places. Yeah, like crazy shit.
How many months have you been doing that?
This
I
is like
guess
still
it's
the first couple weeks.
oh wow.
It's like everything I described is
The,
like a few weeks.
oh my
Okay.
gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah. These are like 18-hour days, not like barely sleeping. It was easier to keep working than to be alone with your thoughts and like
Yeah,
try to
sure.
Yeah.
because it got overwhelming because you're thinking about the amount of people that are dead. Like we're all thinking that Hezbollah is going to start shooting, real powerful missiles that could, if Hezbollah like really took out their arsenal, 30,000 people could die.
Hezbollah is where? That's not in Gaza,
North.
is it?
Hezbollah is the terrorist organization that essentially took over Lebanon and ruined it.
Okay. Okay.
They're funded by they're an NGO of the Iranian regime
Mhm.
and take care of terror and their agenda in that region.
Okay.
So they're fighting a lot internally, which is like good for Israel. It's sad for Lebanon. Um, and Syria is also right there. They got stuff going on funded by Iran. Hamas is funded by Iran. Um, Clarification I actually got is that the money that Biden and Obama had released to Iran actually were very well controlled. This is like a lot of Jews don't know this. But because like they're all, I was also like pissed off because 2 months before the attack, like the administration had released a whole bunch of cash. Apparently, it's actually very well tracked and only is used for like food in Iran. So that was like an interesting clarification I got
Okay.
recently. But
That's good.
they fund a lot of terror, and um, yeah, the
Mm.
North is a mess. Like everyone from the border communities on the North are living in hotels still 8 months later. Like it's really, really bad economic impact. A lot of infrastructure work got put to a halt. Um, and
Yeah, I
I
can only
personally
imagine what
think,
like
yeah,
I was gonna say I can only imagine what like rebuilding that stuff is gonna be like.
it's gonna take a lot
Stuff
of
that
money.
got destroyed. Yeah.
And it's going to take time. And also, you're going to have to convince people because, like, their kids are going to start this, they're going to start the school year, they're formulating their lives somewhere else. And then you're going to have to convince them to go, like, to get used to city life in the center. Like,
Yeah.
life in
Hmm.
Tel Aviv is different than the rest of Israel. Like, Tel
Hmm.
Aviv's like a cool place, and the rest is like real, like, village Middle East vibes, like, kind of what you would imagine Israel is like.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
and like, if you're going
And
to,
so
like,
this is all kind of centered around the Dome on the Rock. Is that correct, or that's at least a pivotal
yeah, yeah,
landmark?
yeah, yeah. So the operation by Hamas was called like um Al-Aqsa Storm. Basically like storming, like we're gonna go liberate the Dome of the Rock. So to Jews, Dome of the Rock was where like David's temple was. It was where our first two original temples were. The temple, which in Hebrew is called the Beit HaMikdash, is the mystical explanation is where is the location where the universe was created. Um, and back in the day, we didn't pray; we made sacrifices. We did sacrifices like animals. And
Yeah.
there were like if you sinned, there was certain ones that you brought. If you like for holidays, there were certain ones. It was like, and you would travel to Jerusalem and do these sacrifices. There would be like on Passover, it was basically a massive barbecue. Like that's literally what it was, just a
Yeah.
massive, massive barbecue. Um, and the people that operated in the temple were descendants of Aaron, Moses's brother. And that's patriarchal. So it's father, son, father, son. And I'm actually one of them. And this is
Wow.
like you can read it if you Google like DNA Kohanim, like Kohanim, or like DNA priests, something like that, you'll see that they found DNA tracers in Kohanim because it's father,
Really?
son, father, son.
Huh.
It's fascinating.
So that's just like kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like we have like status. Uh, um, and there's some weird rules, like I can't marry a woman who's divorced uh a convert, and
Hmm.
technically not even like who's not a virgin, but yeah, that one went out the window. So, um, uh, so yeah, that's like why it's so sacred to Jews because that was like that was the epicenter of the religion. That was where everything went down.
Yeah.
Um, that's like why that's basically why the Jewish state was there. Like why it was the founder of Zionism actually, Theodor Herzl, first proposed it would be maybe Ethiopia. No, Uganda. I think Uganda. Somewhere in Africa was where he wanted to found the state.
Hmm.
And he was like super atheist. And it wasn't until a little bit later that it got like more pushed to have it in the like where Israel is described in the Old Testament. Um, and to Muslims, 99% sure it's where Muhammad died.
Wow, the same location.
Wow.
Temple, yeah, because if you go to what's called the Holy of Holies, so on Yom Kippur, which is our holiest holiday, it's when we like basically repent for our sins of the year. Um, there's a room that the head priest only goes into on that day and performs very specific miracles. And if you go in even like with the wrong intention or the wrong, like your thoughts kind of slip and you lose focus, uh, essentially you die.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What are the
The-
what does he do when he goes in there?
A series of rituals, burning certain incense, certain sacrifices that are like very
Hmm.
specific. I believe they're listed out in the Old Testament. Um,
And if you lose focus, so
yeah,
is that mean like if you don't stay focused on your prayer and
like if the guy
wander
does,
off?
yeah, if you like wander off into something, like it was like you had to be a very pure individual who like really had it together and
Hmm.
whatnot. So,
And there's
um,
only the head rabbi that can go in there.
it was the head priest.
Okay.
And there became like major issues towards the destruction of like uh the first and second temple. Things got like super corrupt and like people were basically like bidding on who became the head priest and like
Really
Oh, my.
yeah, like crazy stuff.
interesting.
Uh,
Yeah.
our history isn't like we don't have saints in our religion. Like we really don't. Uh
Yeah.
and and that's actually for a specific reason, but totally off topic. Uh so
So you mentioned there might be some other special secret to the dome on the rock. What was that? Or you had a theory
so
that might be,
what theory?
you
What
said
are
there
you
might be
talking?
something there that is surprising, or it was
Oh,
just
I think I
before
was
we,
referring to the priest thing and that it's like
okay.
still around. I
Oh,
usually
okay.
find people find it quite interesting because I know exactly where my heritage goes back and like genetics go
Hmm.
back like 50 generations, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so usually people just find that quite interesting. And
Uh,
it's
yeah.
something that generally Kohanim take like pride in. Like we think it's cool.
Yeah.
So, but from the Muslim point of view, that's where Muhammad died, and they now have a temple built at that site.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is something a lot of people don't know. On the Temple Mount now, uh, there are Jordanian like spiritual guards that Jews have to schedule to go to the Temple Mount. We're not allowed anytime we want. We don't have free access to the Temple Mount. You basically have to go with designated guides, and we're not allowed to pray. If you get caught suspected of praying, they kick you out. There are these Jordanian guards, and I'm not joking, and they kick you out.
That's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. So, um, so yeah, it becomes this like
How do they
highly.
know? Are they like mind readers or what?
I've never been. I have like a thing I don't like.
Closed your eyes. Get out of here.
Yeah. I think I've never gone. Um, I my not a lot of people think this way. Um, but the temple was like a massive, beautiful structure. And now we have the Western Wall. The Western Wall was like an outer gate. Like it's literally basically like if you came home and all that was left of your house was like and you lived in a gated community was like one part of the gate on the outside of the gated community.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Mm.
And they're like, "Welcome home." And you're like, "Oh yeah, okay." It's like
Yeah.
I'm kind of like I'm not like I'm a priest. I'm a descendant of a priest. I'm supposed to be like doing really cool shit in this beautiful temple. Like I'm not going. Like I'm on
Yeah.
strike. Um,
Yeah.
so like I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And it's depressing to me. Like honestly, it's depressing. And
Yeah.
um, yeah. So like people talk like it's not really apartheid, but like people like, oh, Israel's an apartheid state. We're like, yeah, because Jews can't go to the Temple Mount. Like they don't let us go.
Mm.
Silly, but like, yeah, that's it's like not many people know that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and so
shoot.
Kind of another question. Have you heard about
yeah,
the red heifers that are part of the sacrifice to
yeah,
initiate, I guess, the new building? Did you know that those heifers come from Texas?
yeah,
Thought
Yeah,
that was
and
funny.
every year they find like one white hair, or like there's like always
Yeah.
one little thing. I'm like, oh,
Oh, they go
uh,
through a crazy inspection process, I've heard, where they look at each individual hair with a magnifying glass. And
dude, yeah. People are really waiting. People are really waiting for the new coming of whatever, the Messiah. I personally think it's nuts. Well, I don't think it's nuts. I think it happened in 1948 after 6 million of us were put into oven, gassed, worked to death, and
Hmm.
then we gained an independent state. There was the War of Independence, where six state, we didn't have an organized military, and we got attacked from every direction, and we survived. Like, I don't know, that's crazy miracles to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so what is according to the
Some
scriptures? What is
people are
the
waiting for there to be a
significance of the
temple.
cow? Okay.
People are waiting for a temple. There's some people that think it says somewhere that it'll fall out of the sky. So they're
Yeah,
literally
well, we'll follow this guy. The
the
temple?
temple.
Wow.
Mm.
People waiting for it to fall out of the sky. I'm not joking. Rational, smart people that make money.
Hmm.
I know some of them, and they think that.
Mm.
And I respect, basically, like, I take their financial advice,
Yeah.
but they believe that. Like, all right,
Yeah.
do your thing,
Yeah.
whatever keeps you motivated. Um,
Well, shoot, like as much as you've seen and been a part of, like over there in Engross, like what do you see coming, like for the future?
I think, okay, so there was a lot of amazing work done after the Abraham Accords, things I never imagined. Like, I never thought I'd step foot in Dubai, and I've been 3 times.
Hmm.
We're on the cusp of having normalization with Saudi Arabia, and then are now flying, I believe, flying in their airspace, civilian flights, and the the Iranian attack, I think, was very telling. Extreme cooperation. Jordan even cooperated. Um, so I'm I'm particularly optimist. I think I think these few terrorist organizations are the barrier to peace,
Hmm.
and I think that the other Arab states are kind of over it, because it used to be like they were like, yeah, we're not gonna have peace with you until like that's worked out, and um, I don't attribute it all to like, I think there's a human aspect, but I think a large part of it is really the reliance on the technology that we produce. Where like now the tech that we produce is like more advantageous than the scent that like that these countries have towards us. And it's like getting to the point where we have things that they need so much that they're like, all right, it outweighs that. So we'll be friends now. Um,
Yeah.
and that's how the governments think. Like, I think a lot of civilians, I've met several Iranians while I travel, especially Iranians, or a lot of them are pretty pro-Israel, the ones that I've met at least.
Hmm.
Uh, and people in Dubai are super cool. Um, I met Lebanese that are cool. So, it's often just the governments that are fucking things up.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's so many Muslims that, like, if a minority are extreme, it's so many people, and if I'm like a minority are also like super cool, it's like it's so many people. Like,
So
it's
many
enough
people.
people
Hmm.
to make things move. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm quite optimistic about the future. Uh, I I believe, and I really hope that de-radicalization can occur in Gaza, and like we can build a future for them. I personally know Jews that are running think tanks and starting to map out, like, how do we fix Gaza? How do we get it on track? Because it's going to take a long
Hmm.
time. Just clearing the
Yeah.
rubble, just clearing
Yeah.
the rubble is going to take years.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like it's a really tough, like, it's heavy. It doesn't affect my everyday life other than like prices of milk. Um, but like, there's like, it's, it's kind of like a phoenix, or like kind of mystically, or, you can't let, you can't let a good, what is it? You can't let a good disaster go to waste.
Yeah.
When things are on fire, it's movable. You can move things. Things
Hmm.
shift. Um, and a lot of people say these things are impossible. I just think that's a bad mindset to have. Because it's kind of like if you say it's impossible, then it's impossible. If you say
Yeah.
it's possible, then it's possible. So like I'd prefer to have a future that Palestinians are living a fantastic life. Um, and I just prefer the people directing their lives and governments directing their citizens' lives towards productivity instead of destruction. Um,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of evidence suggesting that the region is shifting in that direction.
More toward peace.
Cooperation,
Yeah.
a lot of cooperation. And um and we'll see how the world deals with Iran, because if they're the source of funding in the end, if there's no money to support these things, and what happens with Qatar in the future.
Mm.
So, if the terror funding dries up, they're gonna have no choice but to be like, let's play a different way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's my hope for the future. Um,
Do you
there's
see this affecting Dubai specifically or the Emirates?
I remember them putting out some pretty harsh statements towards the beginning, but I think now they're cooperating more. Like it's kind of there's a lot of lip service that had to get done, and that's still getting done, especially with the president right now managing the election. It's very funny. A lot of
Mm.
double think going on. Um, you'll see. I was watching the news in Japan when I was in Japan a few weeks ago, and what what the banner was, if as if you were like in the airport walking and couldn't hear, was one thing, and then what was being discussed was it was two narratives simultaneously. It
Hmm.
was like literally one was basically Israel's doing genocide, and the other was like there's no evidence of genocide. I was like
Wow.
mind blown. I'm like they're playing they have to play every card. They're managing multiple narratives. So I really like to watch policy things that are happening as opposed to any sort of news cycle.
Yeah.
Because that's like,
Very smart.
yeah, like Biden will condemn Israel, like, kind of say Israel needs to stop with this, and then the same day he's sending cash over. Um, so uh so yeah, I just think the extensive business opportunity, like any damaged relations with the UAE will repair. Um, and if not already in the future, I'm confident of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and
Nathan, we have one last question for you. What do you want to?
Well, I can go two ways. We're right at about an hour and 32 minutes, so we'll start wrapping up here. I have this one. So like what would be like your last piece of advice or wisdom that you'd like to leave with the listeners after being through everything that you've been through?
based on my experience in, I think like, I mean, it's kind of generic, but the power of cooperating,
Yeah.
of teamwork can and community is exceptionally powerful in time of crisis. And it's important to build that for yourself before it happens, to have that community to fall on, from
Yeah.
Telegram groups to, local stuff. Like it's really important to have networks to fall back on for logistical things, for emotional support, and focus on one problem at a time. And even 'cause so many of these things seem, there's so many things in life that seem like it's intangible that you can make a difference, and difference can be made, but it's like everyone chips away at the small piece they're capable of. And so, if that's in your business and you just need to focus on like one little thing that needs to get done, like that will make a difference. And you just got to do that little thing, right? Like there's a whole war going on and I'm going and trying to get a water bottle for someone somewhere, right? Seems
Yeah.
super insignificant, but someone needs to get the water bottle. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Machine has many moving parts.
yeah, yeah, and none of it, like there's times where you have like a lot of people. I struggle with this also. Like, you want to be in charge. Like I in some ways was a leader, as like at the beginning, and then as time went on, like much less. And there were times where I was struggling with that. I'm like, but the reality is like it's okay. And particularly because like the organization that I started, there were leaders that stepped up. So I kind of justified it, like, okay, I started that thing that ended up becoming that. But it's like important, like to in professional context, in your personal life, and in a community situation, a national situation, a global situation, like you really can make a difference that adds up if there's cooperation and people are focused on very small things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do have one final question that we want to start asking our listeners at the end of every single podcast. And is this what is one action that the listeners can take in the next 24 hours to bring them one step closer to their goals?
Okay. So I forget his name, but there's a sage, a Jewish sage that said, if not now, when? And it once hit me when I was doing some business stuff and I was unorganized, that if you're not doing it now, you need to write it down and schedule a time to do it, because at some point it will be now. It's always now, and you need to
Mhm.
schedule so that now will be in the future. So it's like so fundamental, but sometimes I'm shocked at people that don't have lists and that don't have things other than meetings in their calendar. So if you have a goal and it's not listed out what needs to get done in the next 24 hours and then the 24 hours after that, and perhaps working backwards of the goal from its
Mhm.
completion towards what you need to do now. So like think about if not now, when, and write it down.
Yeah,
Smart.
I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Well, Nathaniel, this was awesome. Thanks for talking to us about this and sharing your story.
Absolute pleasure. It's been cool. Like sometimes I forget how deep like my upbringing was, and like the like really how unique it is. So I thank you for
Yeah.
allowing me to express my story and remember a lot of this stuff.
No, it's really cool what you're doing, man. It's really inspirational to hear about, everyday people stepping up and making a difference during these times of crisis. And it's hearing things like you're making it happen through WhatsApp and rental cars, and that's really cool.
And
Yeah.
pilots having to
Yeah.
tape phones to their faces, like it's incredible.
Yeah, I'm proud to be a part of it, and there's a lot of work still to be done, and I've got some things planned out that I'm going to be getting going.
We'd
So
love to have
Yeah.
you back and hear about it.
Yeah.
Right quick before we leave, I don't know how active you are on social media, but if you had like a social media or anything that you wanted to plug, or your
Websites.
business website or anything like that that you wanted to plug, if there's anywhere that somebody could reach out to you if they wanted to have a conversation, where could they do that?
Okay. Well, I'll plug the business in case any litigators are listening, and this could be helpful for you. If you reach out, I'll give you a free report and run you through it. So it's called predicta.com, PRE slash, what is that called?
Dash.
Dash dicta, DICTA.com. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to go that route, which is Nathaniel Mayberg, Nathaniel. And I'm the Antichrist on LinkedIn. You'll see my profile picture is black. I'm internet philosopher, and you'll have a laugh if you go through my profile because I don't want to get hit up by salespeople. And LinkedIn's cringe. My Telegram is Papa Bubble, PAPP Bubble with a 3 at the end instead of an E. And my Instagram is Relentlessly Rogue, so you can hit me up there.
All right.
All right, brother. Well, thanks so
Yeah,
much.
thank you very much.